Hello again. A number of people lately have remarked that I seem to spend more time lately saying things about modern society than I do about debunking history. And that since the name of this channel is, of course, History Debunked, that might be a little bit misleading. This is a perfectly good point, and I thought I'd try and explain my purpose in focusing more upon what is being said and thought now instead of delving about in past events. There's actually no contradiction between these two activities. The reason is that history itself is now changing, or being changed, I should more accurately say, before my very eyes. In other words, I'm still debunking history, but I have to explain how this new history, the new idea of history, has come about. I know that older viewers will have seen plenty of stuff in the newspaper and on the television portraying history in a most extraordinary way that they suspect strongly is false and misleading. I'm trying to find out, or I'm trying to explore why that is being done, and that entails spending a lot of time looking at the modern world. Since much of this newly created vision of the past that is being foisted off onto children and young people is associated with race and ethnicity, it cannot be dismantled and examined without talking about what has led people in the modern world to wish to censor and alter the past. This might sound like a lot of waffle, so let's look at a couple of concrete instances of what I'm talking about. For most young people in Britain, talk of an African community would at once suggest a bunch of black people living together. That's what we mean generally by Africans, obviously. Diversity, to the average young person, means a lot of people with different coloured skins. Those of us who can remember a few years ago know that Britain was not like this until relatively recently, and that it was, within living memory, almost completely white. I didn't speak to a black person until after I'd left school, and there were no black people or Indians in the part of East London in which I grew up. Not one. That dangerous knowledge of the way that Britain used to be an ethnically homogenous society is now being eradicated, and the means by which this is being done is by reshaping history for children and proving that there have always been lots of black people and Indians in the country. This is a lie, and it's very cunningly put across to children. Look at the first link which I give in the description to this video. It's from the Tyne and Wear Museums, and it tells us that during the Roman period, Hadrian's Wall Heritage Site was an incredibly diverse place. A photograph is in the article, and I've put it on the thumbnail to this video. It was put up by the BBC, who else, and claims that the first African community in Britain was established here almost 2,000 years ago. At once, most younger people reading this will visualise black Africans living near Hadrian's Wall. In fact, these were a group of soldiers from North Africa, and they certainly weren't black. At that time, there were three groups of people living in North Africa. There were the Berbers, who were indigenous to the area. They weren't black. There were Phoenician settlers in places like Carthage and along in what is now Libya. They weren't black either. And of course there were lots of Romans who came from what is now modern day Italy. No black people. By talking of African communities and that loaded word diversity, the whole aim is to persuade gullible young people to adopt a flawed view of history, which is that Britain has always been full of black people and Indians, just as it is now. In short, this is fake history, and I'm debunking it. To do so, though, I have to show why people are so keen to push this fake history to schools and so indoctrinate children. This means looking at the modern world a lot and asking what is going on. Another example may be seen in the second link which I give, which is a fairly typical site which an awful lot of parents are now turning to since the schools closed down because of the epidemic. A lot of parents are just using the internet to teach their children. They haven't got books in the home. They simply click on supposedly educational sites. They want to teach history. They just Google British history children, and hey presto, they come up with sites like the one that I provide a link to, where children will learn that a group of African soldiers defended Hadrian's Wall during Roman times. Tudor King Henry VIII employed a black trumpeter called John Blank, and Queen Sophie Charlotte, who was married to King George III, had African ancestry and reigned for 57 years. The first of these statements is true but horribly misleading. The second is also true, but it suggests that there were a lot of black people in Britain in Tudor times, which is untrue. And the third is just absolute nonsense. Just to make things clear, I am debunking false history, which is rapidly becoming the accepted narrative. If we're not careful, this will remain unchallenged, and within a generation the actual history of England will have been trashed for good. I will deal in a separate video with the other great lie being pushed to children, which is that the British Empire was as evil as the Nazis. This ties in with the attacks on Winston Churchill as a racist and a bigot, and this is fast becoming the received wisdom too.